guys, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to be sharing with you here on the Picket Studios YouTube channel how to get more out of your stamps using your paper pouncers. We're starting out with the brand new Howling Night background stamp, and you can see here I have my stamp wheel. I'm just using an A2 size piece of cardstock, so it's 4¼ inches by 5½ inches, and I have some fun Halloween colors to show you on this stamp. So I'm starting out here with some bright purple, and you can see I'm using my purple paper pouncer to apply the ink directly to my stamp. And I'm kind of squeezing the paper pouncer a little bit so I can get it right where I want it on the stamp. Once I have the stamp covered as much as I'd like, I go ahead and flip my stamp wheel top over and get that ink down on the paper. Then I can move on to my next color, which is black. I'm going to be doing black in between each of those kind of traditional Halloween colors of the purple, orange, and green. Now, what's awesome about using your paper pouncers on your stamps is that it applies the ink completely evenly. Even if you're using an ink that doesn't generally work well for stamping, your paper pouncers do a really good job of getting an even coating of that ink onto the stamp. It also gives you a nice soft edge for where you've applied the ink. And that is great because it gives you this nice blended transition from each of the colors. So you can see I just get some ink on my paper pouncer. It only takes a couple of pounces on that ink pad, and then I apply it onto the stamp. So after you've stamped, if you want your color to be darker, you absolutely can add a second coat of the ink onto your stamp and re-stamp. That's what's great also about the stamp wheel here, which is carried over in the Picket Studios store, is that it goes back down in that same exact spot. So you can see I wanted my orange to be a little bit darker, so I went ahead and double stamped it just like that. And now I'm going to come back in again with the black. Now I am using an oxide ink here, and so these paper pouncers I have reserved just to use with my oxide inks, and I have a separate set to use with my dye ink. So keep that in mind. You don't want to combine a dye ink and an oxide ink on your pouncer because it could mess with your ink pads, and nobody wants to have that happen. So once I get this layer of black down here, I'm going to come in with the final one, which is my green. These colors are just really traditional, bright, vibrant Halloween colors. I love them and they work great for this stamp. But this stamp, because it's kind of just this wild, kind of distressed looking background with the howling wind kind of whipping through there, you could use this year round for other times of the year. This is not a solely Halloween stamp. It's a great background stamp to add kind of this nice, funky distress look to the back of your cards. I'm using the People Are My Favorite Mummy stamps and dies for this card. I love this set. It has this large, little bit spooky, but also kind of silly mummy that you can use. And I'm going to stamp this out with some of the Picket Studios Black Hybrid ink. This is a great black ink to use on your cards. It is a hybrid ink, which means that you can use it for alcohol ink coloring, and you can also use it for watercoloring. So alcohol-based products and water-based products work really well with this ink. It does stamp very nicely. I did decide I wanted it to be a bit bolder, so I'm coming in here with a second stamping. And you can see up there at the top, I've also stamped a sentiment from the set. I do ultimately change my mind and decide that I want that to be a heat embossed sentiment, so you're going to see that a little bit later here in the video. Once I get the second stamping done here, I'm going to come in and do some alcohol ink coloring in some cool grays. Really simple. I have some C0 and some C2. So I'm starting out with the C2 and I'm just adding a few flicks here and there around on the mummy to add some extra shading and depth and to give that mummy a little bit more of a 3D look. So you can see I'm flicking out from the insides of the legs as well as in the groin area, and then I'm going to come in with the C0 as well to add a little bit of lighter shading and to pull out some of that C2 and blend it towards the areas that I'm not adding anything. I chose to use cool grays, like I said, but you definitely could use neutral grays or warm grays on this and it would still look wonderful. I thought because the mummy's kind of undead that the cool grays would work well, but certainly you can do this however you want. You could even use some light yellows or light browns and that would look fun as well, because then it would give those bandages kind of a scuffed up, dirty feeling, like this guy was coming right out of the crypt on Halloween. One of the really nice things about the Picket Studios coordinating dies is that oftentimes they also come with dies for the sentiments. And that's really important for me because I often like to cut out my sentiments and pop them up on my cards. And I love that I have the option of using the coordinating die. So you're going to see me use the coordinating die for the sentiment a little bit later because, like I said, I do ultimately decide here to heat emboss that sentiment. But you can see the mummy die, it fits perfectly right around the stamped mummy, so I can go ahead and cut that out. And now I'm going to do that heat embossing. So I'm going to put some anti-static powder tool down, get my sentiment stamp where I want it. I'm using some black cardstock and I'm going to heat emboss in white. I find that this looks really nice, especially when my background has a lot of white in it. And it helps for the sentiment to stand out more on my card. So now I'm coming in here with some clear embossing ink. I'm just making sure to get my stamp nice and covered with that ink. And I'm going to stamp down here with the stamp wheel. You could add a second coating of ink, but I find that if you are using a nice juicy embossing ink pad that you generally do not need to do that. So I've used some white embossing powder and now I'm coming in here with my heat gun and I'm going to melt everything on there. Now I do have people ask me a lot, how do you get the white powder off on your black cardstock? I just keep a microfiber cloth. It's actually something that came off of a floor duster. I keep it in my craft room here and I use it to wipe off my cardstock and it gets all of the anti-static powder off of there, no problem. So now you can see I'm using that die that coordinates with the sentiment and it's going to fit perfectly around there. I went ahead and used my die to cut out some black foam tape as well as using the die for the mummy to cut out white foam tape. This is going to allow them to pop off my card and give them some extra dimension. And it also is pretty easy to use because everything just lines up, so you just kind of work your way around each piece and you make sure that your foam is adhered right in the same spot behind your die cut. Now we can go ahead and put everything together. You can see I cut down my Howling Night piece there so that I can get a nice thin black border around it here with a piece of black cardstock. And then I'm putting it on a white card base. So the only things that are going to be popped up on my card are the mummy and the sentiment, but certainly you also could pop up any of the panels if you want extra dimension. I definitely do that for some of my cards, but for this one I wanted it to be fairly easy to mail, so I didn't pop up too much on this card front. I did want to add a little bit of bling to my card, so here is the Pumpkin Patch Sequin Mix Plus. Beautiful Halloween colors. I love all the little pieces in it. And this is the I'm Alive Sequin Mix Plus. So you have those nice bright Halloween colors in each of these mixes. So I'm kind of adding sets of 3 in each of the designated sort of color areas. So I've got some purple sequins there, and now I'm putting some orange sequins over the orange stamping area. And then lastly, I'll add some green sequins up there in the top right hand corner. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Picket Studios YouTube channel. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified of future videos as they come out. And you can also find lots of inspiration over on Facebook if you head to the Picket Studios community page. And you can also share any projects you make. Thanks again, and have a great day.